Welcome to today's episode of Commissioner's Corner. I'm your host, Allen County Commissioner Ron Turpin. Anyone who knows me knows how important my relationship with Jesus is. As a follower of Christ, I strive to be like him every day. This show has been designed to talk in depth about big issues occurring in our community and the people that are helping to shape it. I am very excited today about our guest. He isn't an elected official or a CEO. However, he and his team at City Church are helping to shape our community in powerful ways. 10 years ago, my guest felt called by God to plant City Church. Today, it is a thriving ministry that is serving thousands every week. To talk about Jesus, people, and helping people know and follow Jesus, I am thrilled to have as my guest today, Chris Freeman, lead pastor of City Church. Chris, welcome.
Hey, Ron, thank you so much. It's so good to be here and appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation.
So I am excited about this next hour. We always start off, people really never get the chance to share their story. And so we always start this show off as people kind of sharing their story with us, kind of where they are, how they got to where they're at today. Please share some of your story with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my story starts in the great state of Texas. I was born in Texas. My dad was in the Army. He was a sergeant in the Army. He was actually deployed to Operation Desert Storm. And so, but I was born Fort Hood, Texas, lived there till I was about 9 years old. My dad got out of the Army after his deployment, and then they wanted to get closer to home. And home for them was Southern Ohio, kind of down where Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia all come together. And there was an opportunity for him. He was a heating and air guy, and an opportunity for him to transfer to Fort Wayne, Indiana, which was a lot closer than Texas. And so when I was 9 years old, moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, knew nothing about Fort Wayne or the state of Indiana.
Because Fort Wayne and Texas are so close to each other.
Right, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I knew Indiana was a state, but I didn't know anything else about it. And moved in the middle of winter. So, you know, I think I had seen snow one time prior to that move, and moved in the middle of winter. And I think when we moved, there was 15 inches of snow on the ground in February. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But from that point on, Fort Wayne has mostly been home. So I attended Glenwood Park Elementary School, Blackhawk Middle School, Snyder High School. And then when I graduated, I actually went to Taylor University, Fort Wayne.
Go Taylor.
That's right. Yeah. So I was the last graduating class of the Fort Wayne campus. Now, the main campus in Upland, Indiana still exists, but the Fort Wayne campus closed in 2009. That's when I graduated. But thankfully, I was able to complete 4 years there. Met my wife there. Her name's Madison, and she's originally from Peoria, Illinois. We got married the summer before our senior year of college. So 21 years old. We just celebrated 18 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
Just a couple weeks ago. So,
you guys are still young.
Yeah, I know. 39 and 21 years in. But
I'm doing my 30th this year, so
awesome.
You still got a long way to go, brother.
That's right, yeah. Well, wouldn't change it for the world. So thankful for her. She's been such a gift to me and a blessing from God to our family. But so we graduated in 2009. And then from there, we moved over to Dayton, Ohio. I did youth ministry at a large church over there for about 7 years. And our first child was born there, and she's now 13 and full-on teenager in every way. So I am not cool to her at all.
Some days you're the smartest guy ever, and some days you're just a bonehead, right?
Yeah. But she's super sweet. And then we, in our time in Dayton, Ohio, really started feeling a stirring and a call toward planting a new church. And it's a long story, but ultimately God ended up leading us to walk away from all of our security in every way, quit jobs and uproot and move back to Fort Wayne and plant a church here in the urban core of our city. And so in that same year that we did that, we weren't necessarily trying to, but we ended up getting pregnant with our second. And he was born, we launched our church in November of 2016. He was born 1 month later on Christmas Day. So he was a Christmas Day present. So that was a whirlwind of a year.
Although as a pastor,
it was a crazy year for us. But so we've been back in Fort Wayne now for 10 years and just doing faithful ministry and watching God do what we could have never imagined. And it's been such a joy to just to be a part of the ministry in Fort Wayne.
So you talk about, for those not familiar with City Church, and it's a very, what I would consider a dynamic church. You've got a lot going on.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about the calling that you and your wife felt when you were in Dayton. Tell us a little bit about what you felt God calling you for this church to be.
Yeah. Yeah, the first thing I would say is we just had such a passion to reach the lost. And, I think every church has that passion or should have that passion. But, man, it was just this burning passion in us to make sure if we're going to plant a church that we are reaching primarily lost people. Now, the bottom line is whenever you start a church, you need found people to help you reach lost people, right? You need some people who know Jesus and have been, following him for a while as mature disciples to help you. But we really wanted to reach lost people. So that was number one, is just, man, we really want to do this so that we can bring people into the kingdom of God who are far from God and save lives for all of eternity. And so that was burning passion number one. And then number two for us was we really wanted to plant a church that as much as possible could reflect the whole kingdom of God. And that was one of the things that I actually loved most about Fort Wayne growing up here. I mentioned I went to Blackhawk Middle School, Snyder High School, played football at both of those schools. And, in most of my life, all of my extracurricular activities and school experiences, they were wildly diverse experiences. I had just as many friends who didn't look like me as did and came from different backgrounds, cultures, ethnicities. And the only place where that wasn't really the case for most of my life was the church. And there are a whole lot of reasons for that. But I remember for me thinking, like, if we're going to start something from scratch, like, we get an opportunity to do something new and different. And so we really wanted this church to reflect the diversity of our city. And so that's really what led us to planting this church in the urban core in the southeast side of Fort Wayne. And man, God has really exceeded our expectations. Our church
He always does.
It is just an unbelievably diverse church in every way. We are multi-ethnic, multi-economic, and multi-generational.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because that was actually my next question is, when you look at your website, you are very clear in your vision statement, is to be a multi-ethnic, multi-economic, multi-generational church that is radically committed to Jesus, each other, our city, and our world.
That's right.
So walk me through that vision a little bit and why you and your team are so passionate about this, that this is your core of why you exist.
Yeah. Again, what it starts with for me is Scripture, right? In Revelation chapter 7, we get this picture of what the end will be. When we are in the eternal kingdom with Jesus gathered around his throne, he's at the center, right? So and that's the only way we're going to have that kind of unity is with Jesus. It doesn't exist without him. But when Jesus is at the center, the text tells us that every tribe, every nation, every tongue is gathered around the throne in unity, worshiping him. And so my thought is like, man, Jesus teaches us to pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, if we know that's what heaven will look like, then I want to see that happen as much as possible here on earth as it is in heaven. And so that's what we started chasing after. And I will tell you, it's not easy. People are messy. And we all have our natural tendencies and proclivities and preferences. And one of the most beautiful things about having a diverse church is everybody's preferences get checked at the door.
Right.
Nobody gets exactly what they want, right? But then we realize, hey, we're laying down our preferences, picking up our cross, and going to follow Jesus together. And so, man, I will say for me, it's been one of the most powerful disciple-making tools is having a diverse church, because you're constantly confronted with like, hey, what's my own natural preference, or maybe even just my own church background, right? We all come from our own church backgrounds, worship style, whatever that may be, versus what's actually kingdom of God, what's actually Scripture, what has God actually called us to do, and so we've been chasing that down for 10 years, and we have dozens of nations represented in our church. If I had to put a percentage on it, it's kind of tough for us to know exactly, but I would say we're probably pretty close to being a 40 to 50% minority driven church, and then 50% white. And so when you get that kind of ethnic diversity, man, beautiful things happen. Also, a lot of challenging things can transpire as well, but it's all good, and it really helps us to grow. But then I think one of my favorite things about our church over the last few years is not just the ethnic diversity, but the generational diversity that, we really are. When we first started the church, Ron, we were so young. Like I was 29 when we planted the church. And statistics say that your church will reflect the lead pastor's age within about 10 years on either side, right? So, 19 to 39-year-olds. So that's exciting until you have to pay bills, right? and you've got a whole bunch of like 20-somethings who are
19-year-olds don't have a lot of money.
No. So they're giving you like a $7 offering, but they're doing it electronically. So you're paying like a $3 processing fee. Right. And it's like, this is not going to keep this thing afloat. But over the last few years, God has just brought so many people from so many different generations. And honestly, that's one of the things I'm most excited about our church right now is this multi-generational discipleship that's happening. I think culturally, where we are right now in our country is that there are a whole lot of young people who have rejected anyone who is older than them, right, or from previous generations. And that's really sad because you're missing out on an opportunity to learn and grow from people who've got wisdom and experience. And yet in our church, we see young and old people coming together and learning from one another and being discipled by each other. It's just a really beautiful thing.
And that is a great place for us to take our first commercial break.
All right.
You are listening to Commissioner's Corner on WOWO. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner. I'm your host, Allen County Commissioner Ron Turpin, and my guest today is Chris Freeman, lead pastor of City Church. Chris, before the break, we were talking about the vision of City Church. We talked about vision. Your mission is to embrace the lost. What does that look like to you?
Yeah. I said earlier, our heartbeat really from the beginning was to reach lost people. And in order to do that, that means you've got to be comfortable with the mess, right? When you walk
and we all, by the way, are messy.
That's right. Every single one of us are. But when you walk into City Church on a Sunday morning, it does not look like your stereotypical church in that most of the people who come to our church have no church background. And so, there is no standard for dress. One of the things we actually say all the time is we don't have a dress code. Just wear something. Make sure you're wearing clothes. Like that's all we expect from you.
Well, we always told our kids, it doesn't matter what you wear, just wear enough of it.
That's right. Yes. But you'll probably see just as many tattoos in our church as you would see anywhere else in the community. And it just doesn't necessarily look like your stereotypical church. And a large part of that is because so many people who've come to our church didn't ever attend a church prior to City Church, and they didn't know who Jesus was. And so every sermon I preach, I'm preaching it with that in mind, right? That there are people in our service that day who have never heard the gospel before. This is their first time ever stepping foot in church. In the last 2 years, we have baptized almost 900 people in our church body. Last year alone, it was a little over 500 people that we baptized. And so, it means just being willing to get into the mess with people, to expect that people are showing up with all sorts of really big issues and challenges in life, and to welcome them just as they are. No matter who you are, no matter what you carry in with you, you're welcome here. And we want to see your life changed for the better.
Well, because you have kind of almost a dual challenge where you have these folks that have never been churched before. And I know a number of people that go to your church who have been churched, but have been hurt in the church.
Yep.
So they may have walked away.
That's right.
And you may be the first time they've come back through church doors in a very long time.
That's right.
So you almost have those dual things that you have to compete with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, we do some unconventional things that for people who've been in their church their whole life, it kind of ruffles their feathers a little bit. Like one example would be we will allow people to serve in certain roles in our church without even being a Christian. And that really throws people off. Now, we don't let you serve in a discipleship ministry without being a Christian because you're not a disciple yet. But you can serve coffee. You can be a greeter at the door. You can be on our parking lot team. Now, you can't hate Jesus and be on those teams. But if you're searching, if you're curious and you're not sure what you believe yet, and what we found is by putting people in those roles, they actually start to rub shoulders with people who do know Jesus. And just as many people are coming to faith in the parking lot or on the coffee team or on the greeting team as they are in the service, because they're hearing the gospel and seeing the gospel lived out by people who are serving right alongside them. And so just really having a mindset that says we anticipate that lost people are going to come and be a part of this. And then one of the things we found is that the very best people to reach lost people are newly found people who just discovered who Jesus is.
And they're usually the most on fire.
And they're the most on fire, and they're the ones who still have the majority of their relationships are with people who don't know Jesus, right? You know, maybe they were in the club last week, and this week they're inviting all their friends that were at the club with them to church this Sunday. And so it's a beautiful thing to see. But yeah, we've been on that mission for a long time. We never want to lose sight of that. And that doesn't mean that, you know, we're a shallow church by any means, or that we keep things surface level. We're not afraid to go deep. But we just recognize that there's got to be a shallow end of the pool and a deep end for it to work well.
Yeah, it's one of the things most people may not know about me is that I am passionate about the church, passionate about our pastors. Your job is not easy. I've seen it. I've never served in that role. However, I've been a lay leader for a long, long time in my local church, and I'm chair of the board of our national seminary. So I'm passionate about pastoral education, about helping build more and better preachers, and I've seen the toll that it can take, because Satan wants you to fail.
That's right.
Because if you're succeeding, you've got hundreds coming to the Lord, and he does not want to see that. So he wants to put as many obstacles in your way as possible. He wants to trip your family up, which is why I think we in the local church have to do everything in our power to encourage and support our pastors and their families, because it's tough, and I have a tremendous respect for what you do. What is, knowing all that, and there's a lot on your plate, you know, it's not like you just come in Sunday morning and you preach and that's it. What's your favorite part of being a lead pastor?
Yeah, you know, there's so many parts of the job that I love. I wake up every day and am reminded that I get to do what I love for a living, right? That's not everybody's story, and I get to do this, and it is just such a joy. But there are some hard parts to the job, just like any job. For me, I would say two things. Number one, I do just love preaching. Like, I actually just took 3 Sundays in a row off. I don't do that very often.
I've heard drove you crazy, didn't I?
I was going stir crazy. I'm like, this is what I was made to do, right? Like, I've got to get back up there and preach. So this past Sunday I was back, and felt like I was right back at home. But the thing for me really is, from the beginning, I've always been a people person. I genuinely do love people. Like, I'm an extrovert. I don't know a stranger. I want to meet people all the time. I want to get to know their story. I actually, right before this, I was sitting at a coffee shop downtown, meeting with a guy who's fairly new to our church and just learning his story and sharing some of my story. Like, I still love doing that, even though I can't do that with everyone.
Right.
I want to try to do that as much as I can.
Well, and you and I did that a few weeks ago. We had not met each other. In passing, we've seen each other, but really a few weeks ago we sat down and had lunch and really got to know each other.
That's right. Yeah, and I love that. That's still my favorite part of the job. I just reminded our staff team just a couple weeks ago that we are in the people business. More than any other organization in the world, we're in the people business. People are the priority. Because
I try to remind our people of that too. In the government, we're the people business as well. Right. So
yes, and so I love spending time one-on-one with people. It's really my favorite part of the job.
So the contrary, what's your least favorite part?
I would say responding to crisis, particularly when it's the result of somebody's own really poor decisions. So when a family's walking through betrayal, and you've got to step in those moments, it is just gut-wrenching. And one of the things I've said for years now is that being a pastor means that you get a front row seat to everything.
That's right.
The most beautiful parts of the kingdom of God and what God can do, but also the most broken parts of humanity.
Right.
And sitting in those moments and having to help someone navigate through, just unbelievable pain because of sin and destructive decisions, that's the worst part of the job.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that we have to pray for you and your family, because without Jesus, that takes a toll on you.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's when you see the worst of humanity.
Yep.
And I don't care. I clerked for a criminal judge when I was in law school, and we saw the worst of humanity every day.
Yeah.
Rapes, murders, child molestations. When you see that all the time, and you're seeing a lot of that in the work you do, it takes a toll. And the only thing that is showing that redemption that only Jesus can do,
that's right,
of that. So in your role, and you meet with thousands of people, what do you see as our biggest need in the community being today?
Yeah, this is probably going to sound cliche. And and you're probably, everybody listening is going to expect my answer. But the biggest need in our community really is Jesus. It's transformation. It's not behavior modification. That will happen. But first, people need to know that there is a God who loves them and who wants to change their life. And so here's the way I said it to my church this past Sunday. If the Christians in our community would just live like that's true, right? Like if we could just live like the gospel is true and really believe that, right. I think that we could really transform the city from the inside out.
I agree completely. And that's the reason I ran for commissioner.
Yeah.
When we had the whole conversation about the jail, to me, the issue was we talked about the conversation in the community was cost, location, size.
Sure.
It wasn't, why is that jail full in the first place?
That's right.
And if we serve a God who is in the redemption business,
yep.
we're all redeemed.
Yep.
And, no matter how well put together we may seem to be, we still have a lot, we still are messy to a holy God that looks very different from what we're at. And I can't do enough government programs. We can't do enough, other good things. And there's lots of good things going on in our community, but only Christ can redeem.
That's right.
And, I agree with that I think that at times, one of the challenges, when I first ran for commissioner, my wife told me, you know what, if you're going to be in a much more public-facing role, you need to make sure that you're always reflecting Christ. Mm-hmm. Because you never know that person that looks and says, well, he says he's a Christ follower and he's in this role, but he's fake.
That's right.
And we hear that all the time, right?
Yep.
Where you see someone who's had a moral failure or something else where Satan uses that.
Yep.
So there's a tremendous responsibility you have, I have, others have, that if we're going to say we're a follower of Christ, we better act like it.
That's
because
right.
we make the kingdom work so much more harder if we don't do that.
That's exactly right.
So with that, we'll take our next commercial break, and then we'll get into a little bit about what can we as the church do working together to help address this. You're listening to Commissioner's Corner here on WOWO. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner. I'm your host, Allen County Commissioner Ron Turpin, and my guest today is Chris Freeman, lead pastor of City Church. Chris, before our break, we talked about the biggest need in the community, and we both agreed it's Jesus, people having a personal relationship and the freedom that comes from that.
That's right.
We also talked about we don't always, as Christ followers, model that real well.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of churches, in our community. We've been known as the city of churches for a long, long time. How well do you think that the church works together in Allen County?
Yeah, I think in some ways it's getting better, but it is a challenge, and I've tried to study a little bit of the history of the church in Fort Wayne, and, you go back far enough and you have, there's like a really strong Catholic heritage here, and then also a really strong Lutheran heritage, and then you've got other denominations sprinkled in, and then there's been a rise of more of the non-denominational kind of church movement over the last 20, 30 years.
Which is more where you're at, right?
We're probably closer to that category, and so it can be hard for the church to work together. I have seen some strides in the last probably 5 to 10 years, and in some ways where the church is doing better than maybe they have in the past, but I think a big part of it is that we've got to be okay with setting aside the minor issues to focus on the major ones, right? And we get so caught up in those little
Calvinism versus Wesleyanism.
That's right. Yes. And so at the end of the day, if we all believe that Jesus is King and that He is the answer, then if we can focus on that and work together, then I think we can accomplish a whole lot more.
No, I would agree. Speaking of City Church, we've not really talked about numbers or anything else, and I know that's a side piece of this.
Yep.
You have a church that, you started out as a church plant, very small. You moved a few years ago to the south side of the city in the old Scots.
Yep.
Tell us about why you picked that location, the size. It's a very unconventional spot to put a church in, an old grocery store. Yeah. But you're also running out of space there.
Yeah.
And so kind of walk us through all those pieces.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we first planted, we were meeting in the City Life Center right next to Southside High School. And it was just a gymnasium kind of set up, tear down every week. And we were there for about a year and outgrew that space. And then we actually were able to move to the old Taylor campus on Rudisill Boulevard down there and the south side as well. But in a neighborhood that's a little more, removed from the rest of the community. And so kind of this little quiet neighborhood, but a growing church in that location. And then it was actually in 2020, the beginning of 2020, COVID breaks out.
We don't know what that is here, by the way.
Sure,
so.
Yeah. Well, no church was gathering
exactly
anywhere
right.
at that time, right? And then you have all the mask wars and vaccination wars and all the other things that come along with that, right? And gosh, what a fun time to be a pastor, I will tell you that. But around that same time, in March of 2020, we're a 3-year-old church at that point, and someone approached us and said, "Hey, we know that you don't have your own location. We don't know if you know this, but the old Scott's grocery store on Decatur Road is on the market. Are you interested?" And I'm like, am I interested? Like, I don't know if and when we'll be meeting in person again, right? Like, this is the beginning of a pandemic. We don't know what's going to happen here. And so, but we said, you know what? Like, we can either act in fear or in faith. Like,
That's right.
We should at least explore this.
Well, and real quick, I've always said those two don't exist together.
Yep.
Fear and faith do not exist in the same place.
Yep.
You either have faith that God can do it, or fear and don't trust that he can.
That's right. Yeah. And so we, our elder team started just praying about it. And the number one question we asked was, would purchasing this facility and moving our church there move us closer to the vision that God has for us or not? And that really drove the decision. Right. And so ultimately we said yes, and we bought the building in 2020, at the end of 2020. And then it took us a couple years to start building out a plan, and then we did a capital campaign, and then we spent about a year renovating that facility and turning it into our church. And then in April of 24, so a little over 2 years ago, at that point, we were already bursting at the seams. We were 2 services at the old Taylor campus. We were about 1,000 people. And we had to go somewhere. I mean, there was just no room for us. And so fortunately, we were able to move into the new location, new to us. And so we moved in there, and we knew that we would probably see a little bit of an uptick. Anytime a church goes from portable to permanent, you're going to see 10, maybe 20% growth over the next 6 months to 2 years. But we had no idea what was in store. And so when we moved in, we were a church of about 1,000. A year later, we were a church of 2,000. And a year later, we're a church of almost 3,000 people every single Sunday. And so we had to add a third service. We are, maxing out our parking lot. We're bursting at the seams again. And going back to what I said before, so much of that is reaching lost people. And so it has been an unbelievable opportunity, but also a great challenge, because we have so many people who are brand new to the Christian faith. They don't know their left from their right. And we're now entrusted with discipling them and teaching them what it means to follow Jesus. And so that's actually been the biggest challenge God has given us over the last couple of years, is not just growth, but how do you steward that growth? How do you actually make disciples, not just attenders, but disciples out of people who are coming and wanting to learn and grow in their faith?
You know, it's interesting. I think a lot of us, because we all tend to work in our own groups, right? And usually people like kind to us. And so probably most listeners here, well, I don't know a lot of non-Christians, and so, we're in a city of churches, and so everyone goes to church,
right.
Or, that's it. However, your experience is, the growth that you've experienced are mostly unchurched people.
That's right.
So people that have heard about City Church, they're invited by that friend who maybe found Jesus last week.
Yep. And
so you've seen that exponential growth go, because you're reaching these lost people.
Yep.
Who are having lives transformed.
Yeah, the statement, the City of Churches, was actually given to our city over 100 years ago. And it was probably accurate back then. But today, we have no more churches per capita than any other city in the Midwest. And we have no more church attenders per capita than any other. We're pretty average. And so there are a lot more lost people than most people realize, but particularly amongst younger generations. Right. So, for like, when I think about like my parents, their generation, probably the majority of them either attended church at some point in their life or still attend church today. But for millennials, and especially Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the majority have no church experience, no church background whatsoever. And so it's a remarkable opportunity, because it gives us, these are people with no church baggage. They just have the world's baggage, that everybody's got baggage of some sort,
right.
But they don't have any church experience. They just come in fresh and go, tell me what to do. and it's been a beautiful opportunity for us to minister to them.
So one of the other things that I see on your website is growing deeper with God, growing closer with each other.
Yeah.
Walk through what that means to you in the church.
Yeah. So our desire really is to create a deep community that's not only committed to Jesus, but to each other, right? And so we are a small group heavy church. 50% of the adults in our church are in a small group of some sort. And so, when you go to a church with as many people that attend our church now, you can sneak in and sneak out every single Sunday,
right.
and nobody will ever know your name,
Right.
know who you are. But it's in that next step of jumping in a group, getting in a Bible study, committing to a group with 10, 15 other people that can know your name, know your story, love on you well, and also hold you accountable and help you grow. That iron sharpening iron has been a really beautiful thing for us. And that's been a huge part of our growth as well. Actually, just as many people come to our church through a small group as they do through a Sunday service. There are a lot of young people who they're kind of turned off by like the idea of church, right? Like
Right.
the formal church, going to a building, sitting in a service. But they're a lot more open to like, hey, my friend is having a small group in his apartment, or, at the local coffee shop, I've been invited to come and hang out, and I know him and I want to hear more about his faith. So I'll go check that out.
So how do you, with that kind of model, how do you ensure that the people that are leading those small groups are speaking biblical truth?
Yeah, that is the most important part of the whole process, right? And so it's making sure that from the top down, our leaders are developing leaders. So there is a lot of investment. We are heavy on leadership development in our church, a lot of investment in the people who would want to lead, and a lot of vetting as well. And there are people that we have to say no to, right? There are people who, man, they want to lead a small group, but man, their theology is really outside of the box, and it doesn't align, or their spiritual maturity isn't quite there yet. And so there's a lot of development in that process as well. It's a full-time job for sure. And actually we have a teaching and discipleship pastor, and that is his full-time job.
I can see that.
Yeah.
So with that, we will take our last commercial break. You are listening to Commissioner's Corner on WOWO. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner. I'm your host, Allen County Commissioner Ron Turpin. Our guest today is Chris Freeman, lead pastor of City Church. So during our break, producer Josh had asked me to ask the question about, you are at the former Scotts location.
That's right.
And for those who have lived around this area for a while, there was a big iconic sign there of a cornucopia.
That's
and
right.
So what happened with that?
Yeah, this was probably the most hotly debated decision that we've ever made as a church. Lots of strong opinions about that cornucopia, and understandably so. The building was built back in the 1950s, and they put a cornucopia on top of it when it was built. And actually, the facility itself was state-of-the-art. When it was open, it was the largest grocery store in America.
Wow.
The supermarket didn't exist yet, right? So this thing was state-of-the-art in every way. And if you've been inside our building, there aren't any columns anywhere because it was built with these giant wooden single-span trusses, which were, again, the largest wooden trusses in the world at the time. So some really cool features in our facility. And they put this cornucopia on top as well, just to kind of market, right? And
it is marketing.
Yes.
You know where you're at when you see it.
And then the original sign actually had lights that would light up on it. And then in the 90s, they had to take that down, and they replaced it with one that looked like it, a replica. But a lot of people thought it was the same sign from the very beginning. And so they're like, this is a historic sign. You can't take it down. We had people actually take it up with like the Historical Preservation Society, and they're like, no, it's not actually a historical sign. We wrestled with it, but ultimately the sign had to come down because the columns that supported it were in the vestibule of the structure. And as we were remodeling, for a grocery store, when you have 2 or 3 people coming in at a time, that's not a big deal. But when you have 1,000 people coming in or out all at once, it creates a fire hazard for people to be able to get in and out. And so we were obligated to take those columns out. But we really tried. We pitched all sorts of ideas to give the sign away. And nobody wanted it. It's actually massive. There were 2 of them. They're 55 feet tall, not including the structure itself. So once you put the structure in, it was a 75-foot tall sign. And so actually somebody from our church still has the sign. It's in pieces. It came apart in pieces, and it's on their property. And if you're listening to this and you want it, give us a call, and it's yours. You can have it.
I think that would look great outside the WOWO studio.
I love it. Put it right on top.
We're going to do a petition, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so that's where it is today. It's being preserved for whoever wants it.
So, all right. So from that, we'll pivot to much more spiritual conversation.
Sure, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about City Movement. What is it, and why does your team think that's so important to moving us towards God?
Yeah, so the worship leader at our church, his name is Jordan Applegate. Jordan and I actually go all the way back to middle school. And actually, even a little bit before that, we didn't realize it, but we found a picture. We were both in this same little church. It was kind of like a knockoff of Boy Scouts called Royal Rangers when we were in fourth grade at this church. And we found a picture. We were in there together. We didn't know each other at the time, but we played football together in middle school and high school. And so when we planted the church, we reconnected. And he said, man, I'd love to help you in any way. His passion was for worship, and he's an unbelievably gifted worship leader. And so worship has been central to our ability to reach people. God moves through worship. And if you come to City Church on a Sunday morning, you will feel it. I mean, we worship passionately, loudly. Probably the number one complaint I get from some of our older generations is, Pastor Chris, that's too loud. It's too loud. Can we turn that down? And I always hear them out, but then I just remind them, I say, it may be too loud, but I want you to look at all these young people in here who were not attending church before, and God's doing something through this worship in their heart. I found that worship opens people's heart to actually receive the word. And so that's what City Movement is. It's the name of our worship team, and they have a passion for actually taking worship outside the walls of the church as well. So even coming up here this Friday, they're going to be down at Electric Works doing a free outdoor worship concert, and anybody can come and encounter God in a really powerful way. But we've also found that worship has a way of uniting people. Again, you will see people from different theological backgrounds and spectrums of church that will come together to worship Jesus. And so that's a little bit about what City Movement is all about.
Okay. You also have a pretty dynamic youth ministry as well.
Yeah.
You say on your website that your goal is to inspire young people to walk in confidence, grow in faith, and reflect Jesus' love to the world.
That's right.
Why do you see that as so important?
Yeah, as a dad of a 13-year-old little girl who is growing up in the digital age and seeing the impact of technology and social media and just the way that the enemy wants to work through anything and everything he can to come after our young people. If you do any research on this, you'll see that with the rise in social media use is also a massive rise in insecurity, as well as suicidal ideation, all sorts of mental health issues, problems, eating disorders for young women, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And so we feel a strong call to combat that, and to combat that with the hope of the gospel and the confidence that comes from walking in step with the Spirit and knowing Jesus. And so that's really our focus of our youth ministry, is to be a safe haven, a place of refuge for young people who are asking big questions and are constantly being compared to others, and they really can't escape it anywhere else, right? Like, they're always playing that game in every other sphere of their life. But when they come to our youth ministry, our goal is really just to build them up. Man, the world's going to beat you up, especially as a young person. The world's going to beat you. Our goal is to build you up. We just want to speak the truth of the love of God into your life, build you up, and then not only build you up, but empower you to go and do the same thing, to know Jesus and then share the hope that you found. And so that's part of why our youth ministry has grown so much, is because so many young people are desperate. Like they are hurting, they are lost, they are confused, they are asking big questions, and the world doesn't have answers for them. But when they come to our youth ministry and they start to hear the hope of Jesus, man, they just start to light up, and it's a beautiful thing to witness.
So how do we, Chris, one of the things as parents, I'm a parent of, 2 20-somethings. And so when they're in our house, when they were younger and lived with us, we take them to church, and it's, really our faith that they're learning, right? And the goal is to have that convert to their faith.
That's exactly right.
Versus ours. And for us, we sent our kids to the Leo schools because, we had a lot of friends that were, no, you need to send them to Christian school. Well, that works for some kids and not others. For us, we always felt that sending our kids to Christian college was more important, because what we've seen a lot is children that grow up in the church have a strong faith, they go away to college and start doing life, and that starts to melt away for whatever reasons.
Yep.
So for us, you talked about Taylor. I mean, both of our kids went to Taylor in Upland. I was an adjunct professor there. I mean, and our kids, we were thankful, came out of that with a strong faith. Both have, one has a spouse, one a fiance that both love Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so we felt like we've done our job as parents, that we have pointed our kids to Jesus, we've modeled Jesus, and our kids are now living that life for there. How do you do this young person's ministries, they're on fire for the Lord. What can we do to help ensure that they continue that passion as they move out of teenage years into their 20s?
Yeah, I think one of the things you spoke to is really wise. I'm not against, all forms of public college education, but I do think you need to be wise about that. And if you're going to go to, a public school, make sure that as a parent, you are at least finding the Christian ministries on those campuses and helping your kids get connected to those ministries, whether that's Crew or, I know there are a lot of other ones at different schools, but so many great campus ministries available to surround these young people, because the majority of the professors there are not Christians. They don't have a Christian worldview. The majority of the students that are coming there also don't. And now this is their first experience in the real world without you, and they're saturated in an environment that isn't following Jesus. Man, that is going to have a profound impact. And so I would say at bare minimum, one of the things I always tell people is, if you're going to go off to a state school of some sort, the most important question you need to ask is, where's the church in that community that I can plug into? And as a parent, like, that should be far more important than what school they're going to. Is there a good gospel-centered local church that can love them and welcome them in and pour into them? And then on this side of it, right, as Christians in this community, we should be asking that question of our churches. Do we have an environment and atmosphere that says, hey, you're a young adult? Because here's the honest side of the conversation, right? As a pastor, I'm just going to be brutally honest here for a minute. Most young adults, when it comes to what they bring to the church as far as value add, on paper, it's not a whole lot, right?
Big tithers.
I joked about this earlier, but yeah, like, they don't have a whole lot of money to give. And honestly, they're still at a stage where their faith may not be mature enough to really serve in deep, profound ways and disciple others. They're still in need of discipleship in a lot of ways. And so, are you willing to make those sacrifices and welcome somebody into your church who may be from out of town even, and they're attending, Indiana Tech or PFW or whatever here in town? They're only going to be here for 3 or 4 years, and then maybe they're going to move away. But are you willing to say, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, you're here. God brought you here for this season. I want to invest in you and create opportunities for you to learn and grow. But we've got to be on mission, and we've got to be willing to fight. One of the things I remind our church all the time is, man, the devil is fighting for our young people. Right. Satan's fighting tooth and nail for him. You just got to be willing to fight just as hard as he is. You got to care more than he does. And then the other part of that is going back to what I joked about with, the loud volume of our services on Sunday, some of those things. One of the things I tell our older generations in our church I appreciate so much about them is they have intentionally chosen to attend a church that's not specifically designed for them in mind, right? They're attending our church on mission. And the fact that they're willing to say, you know what, this isn't my preference, or the worship style isn't my preference, but I'm here because I want to invest in these young people, is just remarkable. Because I've said this many times, but I think there are far too many grandparents who are, when it comes to their Christian faith, they're like, man, I'm willing to die for my grandkids, but I won't change my music style for them. It's like, well, wait a second. Like, you would give your life for them. Like, come on, let's do whatever it takes. If it's a matter of preference, let's do whatever it takes to make sure that we are investing in the next generation so that they can know Jesus and follow him.
Chris, I have so many more questions I was going to cover.
Sure, yeah.
And I knew this would go over. So I'd love to have you back in the future, because there's so many areas we didn't explore.
Yeah.
The future for City Church, ways that we can partner together. Yeah. You and I have talked about, as we build this jail campus, my vision for that is a restoration campus that would have mental illness and addiction. And how can the church be a part of all that? I'd love to, as we get closer down that, to have that conversation with you about ways the church can be a part, because it's part of that redemption work.
That's right.
The government has its role. However, I think the church has an equally, if not more important role in partnering with us on that. So I want to thank you for being with us today. Your passion for Jesus and people is inspiring, and it's obvious. And so the work that you and your team doing is so important to this community and the dynamic of the quality of place that we live in. For those of you that are listening to us today, I want to thank you for joining us. We are thankful for your support, and we don't take it for granted. I hope you found this last hour not just valuable, but inspirational, and that you've learned something new. This is Allen County Commissioner Ron Turpin, and you have been listening to Commissioner's Corner here on WOWO.